When we learn in a professional context, we don't care about passing tests. We care about, are we able to solve new problems, improve our products, or adapt to new situations? But what is the best way to learn so that we get the results we want? Let's talk about this. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. It is true, when you look at YouTube you find lots of videos that try to teach you how to learn. Most of these videos, they will try to teach you some form of memorization technique, with spaced repetition being the most popular one at the moment. But all of these videos, they're taking the perspective of the student that wants to pass a test. As professionals, we don't care about passing tests. We have real problems to solve. You will find that a lot of graduates are not able to apply what they supposedly learned to a real-world situation. Can it be then that the very process of memorization is counterproductive to learning and to solving problems? In order to understand that, we need to first understand what is it that makes us creative, what is it that enables us to solve novel problems. And interestingly, this has been studied quite a lot in psychology, starting from around the turn of the 20th century. First by introspection, for instance people like Einstein and Poincaré, very creative individuals themselves, they were thinking, what is happening inside me when I have creative ideas, when I solve novel problems? And by the beginning of the 1960s, there had been such a wealth of introspection and the first psychological experiments that it was now possible to formulate theories of what's going on inside us. One of the theories that was advanced was by Mednick in 1962. And he said, really what we're doing is we're activating associations that are inside us. We basically follow a chain of associations. In our mind we store certain concepts, and if you take a concept A and a concept B, they might be very close in meaning or they might be much further apart. Apple and pear, for instance, are very close. Apple and bushfire are already much further apart. There's one concept or several concepts related to our problem, but the solution uses other concepts. And what we need to do is we need to somehow get from the concept of our problem to the concepts from which we build the solution. But apparently there are some individuals which are better at this than other ones. And why might this be? There are some individuals which have some very strong connection between certain words, but very, very weak connection between other words. And so it is very easy for them to jump from one connection to the other connection, which have this very strong link, which are very close to each other, but it is very hard for them to then go on and go to bushfire, for instance, because the connection is so weak. They say, that's ridiculous, that has nothing to do with an apple. And there are other type of individuals for which the difference between the strongest link, the strongest association, and the weakest association is not as big. That means that maybe for the first associations to come, they need a little bit longer, but then they can keep going much further. The meaning of a word is also called the semantics. So you can draw a network on paper where each concept that you know is represented by a word in a circle and every association between concepts. And in this case, association only means how closely are they related to one another. That can be represented by lines. And if you draw that, you end up with a network. So this is why this is called the semantic network. And there are three hypotheses that can be derived from that idea. One of them is every concept should be connected to a lot of other concepts or highly creative individuals. Secondly, whether you access concepts which are closely related to your original concept or concepts which are much farther away, it takes the same amount of effort roughly. thirdly, for less creative individuals, they have some strong modules in their semantic networks. Within the modules, the concepts are quite closely related and they're easily accessible. But the links from this group to any other group or any other part of the semantic network, they're only few and very weak. So it is much more likely that you stay in this module if you're thinking in this module. Now, how do we get from here to learning versus memorizing? For that, we need to go to the study of mindfulness. Mindfulness as it is understood in psychology, and especially the type of mindfulness that was created by Ellen J. Langer and her collaborators from the end of the 1970s to the beginning of the 2000s. They've done a lot of very interesting studies. And based on these studies, they define the concept of mindfulness and mindlessness. Mindfulness means to be here, to be in the present, to engage with what you're doing. So being mindful is highly correlated with being competent at what you're doing, being creative, and having fewer accidents. Mindlessness means you're on autopilot. You're basically doing things the way you've always done things. If we want to solve problems that we have solved already successfully in the past over and over again, we can afford to be mindless. If we want to solve novel problems, adapt to new situations, we cannot be mindless because by the very definition, new problems, new situations cannot be solved by the same old thinking habits that we've been followed time and again. Now the question is, what determines whether we approach something in a mindful or a mindless manner? And it turns out there are two main ingredients for that. One of them is repetition. The more often you've done something in the past in a specific way, the easier it is to do it in that way, but the harder it is to actively focus on what's going on. This is what we know in everyday life as expert blindness. The second parameter has to do something with how are we first exposed to new information. If the information is presented to us in an absolute form and from just one point of view, we are more likely to use it in a mindless manner later on. And now let's look at memorization techniques, like spaced repetition. You're going over the same statement over and over and over again, and it is a statement in one fixed form. Notice anything? Repetition, one point of view, the perfect combination for mindlessness. And then we are surprised that our graduates are unable to cope with the demands of the workplace because they're too mindless. I mean, once you know it, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. And this is the problem with memorization. Memorization is not learning. Memorization breeds mindlessness. Learning breeds mindfulness. With learning, we're able to adapt to new situations, solve novel problems, or create novel products, precisely because we're engaging with the task at hand. And the reason is that the information is stored in our semantic network in such a way that we can go from any module to any other module comparatively easily, and we have a long search range. Whereas with memorization, in the worst case scenario, what you learned is so modularized, the connection with the rest of your semantic network is so weak that 3 days after the exam, you cannot remember a single thing. So then, if memorization breeds mindlessness and we don't want this, what can we actually do to enable us to be more mindful and to be more creative as a consequence? When we learn, we must be aware of multiple perspectives. we must be aware that the information is context dependent. We must think about them from a different point of view. And as such, we're connecting them already with different parts of our semantic network. There are lots of activities that can help us achieve this. Just to give you one example, you can start with a list of words. For instance, one that you create using an ABC list. You take this list of words to a certain topic, and then you go through it and you decide how close is each of those words to the topic. Have at least 3 categories: very close, medium, not very close. You categorize all of these words according to the semantic courtyards, as it's called, and then you take your categorization and you show it to at least 3 other people who already know something about this topic. They will look at it from their point of view, from their perspective, and by listening to them, you're learning an awful lot about the subject in a very mindful way. If you're interested in mindful learning, you want to learn more, you want to get to know more about the experiments that went into this, you can purchase the book by Ellen J. Langer, The Power of Mindful Learning, links in the description. And if you want to know more activities for what you can do to make your learning more mindful, I made a video a couple of weeks ago about 5 games that beat spaced repetition, and you can click right here if you're interested. Otherwise, please don't forget to high-five the like button. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. And until next time, keep thinking.